Yeah, so the unmute button is very, very slow, but I'm here, Mark.
The quote of 2020, right? You're on mute. But very well, we are here. We're going to talk about Windows 11 and other interesting stuff today. So who are these two talking heads? Well, I've introduced myself 6 times by now. So Hilko, maybe you can introduce yourself for a second?
Yeah, I think most people probably know who I am, but I will still do it. So I'm a staff architect in EUC R&D, and I've basically been working on OSAT for the past 4 or 5 years. And I do quite a lot of performance benchmarking in my spare time. And I talk to Mark like, I don't know, Mark, how often do we talk per week?
Yeah, you make my girlfriend jealous. Let's keep it at that. I was just looking at my phone before the summit started, and I noticed that I had 45 text messages. So I believe that was amongst a few others, mostly messages from you. So we work a lot together. Obviously, OSOT is the VMware Operating System Optimization Toolkit, for those who are not familiar with the abbreviation. And it's basically one of the few ways that you have to make Windows 10 or 11 suitable for VDI use at all. Something we will discuss a little bit more in the up and coming slides, of course. So what's on the agenda? First of all, what's new in the enterprise with Windows 11? We're going to show you some differences between Windows 10 and 11. And Blair is rightfully excited because we're going to show something new, a new way of gauging user experience that we've been working on in the shadows for a long time, but we finally feel is good enough to show you. And it's a different way of doing it than the VSI Max. So don't worry for the people who like VSI Max, no worries, but there is something new to prove it can do a lot more. I'm going to show you that. We planned to do something on Server 2019 and Server 22 yet. We didn't put it in here because we just have too much exciting stuff to talk about. If you do have questions about it, just hit me and Hilko up. We have plenty of stuff and interesting talks about all of that. Hilko is going to point out a few new things in VMware's Operating System Optimization Toolkit. We're going to talk about automation a little bit, how you can use that to make your life easier, but also increase the quality of your end-user computing environment, and some recommendations to prep for Windows 11. Now, the first feature that I wanted to show you is actually this one. And it's not really a feature, it's more of a joke. The blue screen is no longer a blue screen. It's a black screen of that. So with that, that's the first new thing that's out there. And there are a few new things that are new in the enterprise that are of a lot more interest that I will show you. First of all, what's new for the enterprise in servicing and support? And I'm just going to pick out some personal highlights here for myself. First of all, they thought about user experience. Isn't that great? Unfortunately, it stands next to security improvements. So that tells me that, yeah, we want to improve, user experience, but security typically doesn't make user experience a whole lot better. Now, quality updates. You will still get monthly updates. Now, we know from VDI Like a Pro research that most of the IT admins globally are doing monthly updates at this moment, but it's shifting rapidly to doing updates once a week. So this should be well within that window. Microsoft will now start to provide a single major feature update once a year, so rather than half-year updates. So that makes your life a little bit easier. That's nice. It will be supported for 36 months, and there are some applications removed. Now, Hilko, obviously, with OSOT is about removing as much as he can from Windows 10 and 11 or the server editions. Some stuff like, I believe, Paint 3D has been removed, and a few other small things that might have a small impact on your environment. And also the possibility to remove drivers. So Microsoft noted that pre-installed Ethernet and Wi-Fi drivers are now offered as features on demand. So if they're in your way, if they're causing some sort of problem in compatibility issues, that might be something that helps you out a little bit. What I found the most interesting feature when looking at the Windows 10 website just a couple of days ago is that they state that apps just work. And Microsoft goes long ways to actually help you make these apps work. They have service for that. The problem with this is that you first need to find out which applications don't work. Now, the average customer that we work with has between 2,000, 5,000 applications. Finding out if 1 or 2 or 5 don't work can be a pain. So we, of course, advertise to use Login Enterprise to quickly scan all of those applications and tell you which ones are working and which ones are not working. So you can give that list to Microsoft. And then Microsoft from there on will help you making sure that these apps start to work. However, by testing again after the fact, you can also make sure that it doesn't break anything else. Now, Hilko, what is your favorite feature in Windows 11 while I switch to the proper PowerPoint?
Yeah, I saw that you had an older one. I was opening up the one on mine as well. Yeah, so my favorite feature is the fancy zones, where you can actually attach an application to a certain area of your screen in a single snap. I kind of like being able to do that. I have the same on my Mac with third-party tool, but it's nice to see that being built into Windows.
Yeah, I was using the fancy zones. I think it's a powered toy to do exactly that. But yeah, it's useful that this is being built into Windows 11 now out of the box. And I believe you can also see it even on Windows 10 with some of the Office applications. So that's a useful thing. So I have found the proper PowerPoint by now. Let me just swap the presenter view and resume sharing. There we go. Of course, we need to skip a little bit ahead now. And as of now, Hilko, we should be in perfect sync again when it comes to the slides. Are you guys seeing end of life for Windows 10 on screen now?
Good. Yeah, we are.
So end of life for Windows 10, Hilko, when is that expected?
So it is the 14th of October, 2025, Mark.
Exactly, you know by heart. So that was a good test. For Windows Server, of course, there's also end of life. So for the 1607 version, that's actually the 12th of October on 2021. So keep that in mind when thinking about that. No, yeah, the 11th of January 2022. Actually, I'm making a joke. For 1607 is the other date. Now, there will also be a long-term servicing branch for Windows 11, if I'm right. And interestingly enough, that will take a while. Now, we're not sure at this point if Microsoft really wants you to run this in end-user computing, but we also get a lot, we always get a lot of questions around, is it available? Should we do it? Microsoft doesn't really recommend it, but please know that at least there will be a version. It will still be a couple of years, though, before that will be made available. It's also something that at this point, we wouldn't recommend you jump your EUC environment to Windows 11, right? It's just something that is not recommended just yet. So Windows 10 versus Windows 11. There are a few things to know. Hilko, maybe you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So at least so far, antivirus is always on. And the reason is that we have not been able to find any method that works and keeps working with Windows 11 that will disable antivirus. So we're expecting, at least for the first couple of months, that we will not have a method to disable antivirus. That being said, when you enable your own antivirus, of course, it will turn off. Then there are hardware requirements for TPM. Also for secure boot, you need to have 4 gigs of memory and you need to have a 64 gig disk. Officially, you need DirectX 12 with WDDM 2.0, and the minimum CPU needs to have mode-based execution control, 2 cores or more, and at least 1 gigahertz. And that means that for the desktops, that we're talking usually about Coffee Lake, there are a few 7 series that work. One example would be the Server Studio 2 from Microsoft, and the X and W series of Kaby Lake. And then on the server, of course, with AMD, Naples is not supported and older, so you need Rome or Milan. And on the Intel side, it's going to be Skylake and above. So Skylake, Cascade Lake, Ice Lake, those should be supported. And beyond that, your minimum display size needs to be 720p or higher.
That's great. So in the meanwhile, I'm frantically looking for yet another PowerPoint, but it doesn't seem to pick on
I
the
do
updates.
have it, Mark, so maybe we should move over.
There we go. That's a great idea. It's always a lot of unexpected things that happen. If only we tested this, Hilko. For a testing company.
We actually did this afternoon. It was fine then. We'll manage. So you should now see the same slide, but then slightly different with some more details on it.
A little bit more styled. All right, let's go to the next one, right?
Yeah, just thinking about it.
So this is one of the interesting performance issues we noted with OneDrive on a Mac today. So for those of you who have attended a few summits before, OneDrive is not my favorite tool, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so when you actually install Windows 11 from an ISO, there are 3 checks that are actively being done. So one check is, do you have a TPM chip and is the version 2.0? The other check is, are you running Secure Boot? And of course, to be able to run Secure Boot, you need to be running UEFI. And do you have 4 gigs of memory or more? Now, when you try to install this with NBT or SCCM and you use a WinPE image to do the installation, these checks are not built in, or at least not yet, so you can still install. But if you want to do this manually, and if, let's say, you're in a lab and you don't have the right kit, you can actually open up a console, open up regedit, and then you can enter in the keys that are shown in here to do like a bypass, and then you can still install.
There we go. Yeah, talking about OneDrive, right? So this was one of the slides from last year's summit, where it was really hard to remove some of the bits of Windows 10 that were poorly behaving. The good thing now about Microsoft with their Azure Virtual Desktop is that a lot of problems that have persisted for a long time are actually being picked up by that team. So for both OneDrive and for Microsoft Teams, there is now an all-machine installer. So you don't need these blunt tools anymore to really fix any desktop before you can go live. And with that, let's go to the next slide. And there is just one thing to note, right? Hilko was talking about the TPM chips. We don't have the data for you yet. It's coming in as we speak. We're testing this. But TPM will have a profound effect on the performance. VMware rightfully warns you of that once you start to enable this chip in your VMware Horizon environment. But it's something to keep in mind. It might affect the scalability of your systems and the time it takes to boot all of your VMs. Next, please. So let's compare Windows 10 versus Windows 11. And many of you have seen me do these charts, but this one is a little bit different. Normally, the hockey stick would always pivot up a little bit. But today, I'm going to show you something new. And I'm not going to go into too many details explaining it just yet. We'll do that later. But the gist of it is, we will now score a system between 0 and 10, where 0 is very poor performance and 10 is the best performance you can get. And we will still add more load to the system as you are used to from the past. So on the Y1 axis, you see the score, and it starts at between 7.5 and an 8. On the bottom, on the X-axis, we see the test time in minutes. Obviously, throughout time, I'm logging on more and more users. And on the Y2 axis, we see the number of active sessions. So what happens here, if I test Windows 10, while I add more and more users, the performance of the system degrades a little bit, but then as the system goes into its steady state, comes up a little bit again. Obviously, performance getting a little bit better once all of the logons have been processed. Let's add Windows 11 to that. So that's the dotted line. We see the blue dotted line. We see that performance has decreased a little bit. From the start, the score is a little bit lower. But remember, this is a completely new product. This is pre-release code. So there might be a difference in there as well. Don't stick too much to these numbers, right? Anything can still change while it's not been released yet. But right off the bat, we see it'll probably come in a little bit lower than Windows 10. Also, you noted that the green line popped up there. And while, and I need to correct myself here a little bit, the green line is something where it's Windows 11. But what we're looking at, instead of averages, is looking at the worst 10%. So we're undecided on this, whether we should go with the UX score on the average user experience or the worst 10%, but you can see the difference here. If we look at Windows 10 versus 11, there's a small difference, but also if we look at the average performance versus the worst 10% of users. And imagine, right? What percentage of users will call your support desk? Will that be the people who are having the best performance, or will that be the people who have the worst performance? Especially in cloud environments and bigger clusters, we sometimes see that there are machines with good and bad performance in the mix. So it's also good to isolate the persons that are having a good and a bad day. And I think if you click one more time, we will actually see the users that I was logging on. So you can see that I was logging on approximately 200 users through this test. performance going down a little bit, and then coming back up. So if we go to the next slide, there's actually our verdict where we score Windows 10 versus Windows 7. So you've seen the chart. On average, throughout the test, Windows 10 scores a 7.3 out of 10. So really mistaken. Yes, it scores a 7.1. Excellent. Now, you are probably wondering, but Mark, where do I compare that to? Well, that's the interesting thing, right? It's a new metric. We just invented it. We're testing it with vendors left and right. Think VMware, obviously, AMD, Intel, Citrix, Microsoft, Dell. We're all talking to these guys to get this number dialed in. We expect to have it in our software soon. But if you want to get a preview copy of this, of course, let us know and we'll definitely hook you up. This will be something that you get after every load test. So the clear winner here is, of course, Windows 10. But we'll see what happens once Windows 11 finally hits the street. Also, something to note there is that this number is a lot more flexible. Not only can it be used to do load testing, it can also get you the performance of a system with just one user. So that's something that is really new and unique. Hilko.
Yeah.
Shall I do this one? Do you want to do it?
No, you can take this one.
Cool. All right. So if we look at what our typical customer is doing today, right, we see that image management goes about installing a new image, whether it's Windows 10 or 11. You install your applications, you take a snapshot, you push it through Horizon and make 1,000 copies of that. Open your snapshot again, make a change, do that one registry edit that you'll forget in half a year to fix a problem, close it again and rinse and repeat. At some point, obviously, your environment will break, as we have a very pleasant representation of here under the next button click, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. Actual representation of a VDI environment failing. So you might invest in automation. And we've heard this a lot already today. Automate, automate, automate. So probably you're going to take MDT or SCCM, are popular choices to start automating your environment. And the great thing is it will make you faster. But the problem is you will also fail faster, right? You will get to that point where it breaks again, just a little bit more efficient. So it will be less work for you. If we move on a little bit. There we go. See, there we go. And again, an actual representation of your VDI environment failing. If we go to the next slide, we've simplified this view a little bit, process that there is, again, MDT and SCCM. Of course, you need to do performance optimizations, in this case with VMware's OSOT. You scale up with VMware Horizon, and then you move to production. Whether you do that manually or with PowerShell doesn't matter. Unfortunately, if you do all of that, there's still a big potential that you will fail. So you made it a lot better. You've lowered the chances a lot already, but now we go into advertise mode just a little bit. So if we go to the next slide, what I would do in this case, it's actually very interesting, is add a few more steps. And the steps are testing. Now, please, be mindful that I will always recommend that you test with our own products, but really, as long as you test, I'm cool with it. You can do it manually, you can use other products, I'm fine with that. But first of all, once you've deployed your image, you're creating your snapshot, do an application compatibility test, because only when you've put everything together, you can see if it all works. The second test you do is after you scale up a little bit. You can do a load test. Application and infrastructure there are both affected. And the last step is in production. So now we move to from pre-production to production, and we check the performance and availability of your system continuously. Now, if you figured all of this out and you want to be really, really cool and really automate the out of everything, you can have the overarching automation with ServiceNow, Jenkins, and all of the other tools that are used nowadays to look at the bigger picture. And of course, our products integrate nicely into this. And I think Hilko is also excited to talk a little bit more about automation and including some stuff in MDT, right?
Correct. Yeah, so in the last version of the VMware OS optimization tool, we added a plugin, a Microsoft Deployment Toolkit plugin. And with that, it's pretty simple to automate the creation of your golden images. And what we actually do is we PXE boot into MDT, then MDT triggers the OS install, does your applications, and then the OSOP tasks in there will actually do all of the optimizations, generalize and finalize or cleaning up the disk image and at the end of it. So the other thing that we've done in there is that we've added in templates. So normally when you work with MDT, if you need to get started, I mean, building out the task sequences can take a very long time, but we gave some task sequences in there where you can just basically use our own and get started straight away. On top of that, we have actions in there for all of our agents, even for VMware tools. So as you can see in the screenshot right here, you can just simply select either VMware tools or the Horizon agent or Dynamic Environment Manager or App Volumes and select the options so you don't have to do all the command lines yourself. And the other thing that we did is that we created a guide, and there's a full guide that just takes you step by step on how you actually need to do the installation and the configuration to get this up and running. So that is a very simple and quick way to get all of this working.
Yeah,
Mark,
it's really cool.
You actually use it, right?
Yeah, I implemented it in my lab. So like we said in the beginning of this session, we chat a lot. So Hilko was very excited about it. I wanted to give it a try, and I thought, well, we'll see. Naturally, I did not read the instructions, so I just copied it to MDT, and I figured to give it a go, and it just worked. It's that simple. Copy your folder there, open your task sequence, and enable what you want to enable, disable what you want to disable, and within minutes, I was deploying Windows 10 and 11 copies with that. It takes into account all of your, VMware tools, the agents. You can even tick your favorite optimizations or choose different templates. So I'm not easily impressed with things, but yeah, this really made my life a whole lot easier. I think it's a good starting point for people who have maybe not invested in MDT or automation yet. Take a look at it, really helpful. But also, if you're already very proficient using MDT, it cuts down a lot of the steps with the optimize and the generalize, just making your life a lot more pleasant implementing it. And the effect of it will be a very, very usable copy of Windows 10 and 11 when it comes to performance. So yeah, 10 out of 10. I would recommend this to everybody. Absolutely.
So we did something right at least. So then on to VMware and Windows 11. Now, we don't recommend using Windows 11 in production for a couple months. And just as we had with Windows 1809, it will take a few months to find all the optimizations and to get a better density level. Now, around the 5th of October, a knowledge base will come out about Windows 11 support and a blog a few days later. And what you can expect is tech preview support in the current products, like 2106, and GA somewhere around the end of the year. So let's say December, January, something like that. At the same time, we will get Server 2022 support for our backends, so for the connection server, your App Volumes Manager. And the other thing you can expect around that time frame is the VMware OS optimization tool as an official product. This also means that on the Flink side, you will no longer be able to get support. It will be real support tickets, and yeah, it's going to be fully a real product in the future. You don't need a license attached to it. So all you need to be able to download it is a My VMware account. And then just as you do with like the OVF tool, you can download it from there.
So I can still optimize my own notebook with it. Great. This is a major step, right? And it shows you that vendors are taking their responsibility, making sure that these VDI environments actually do what they're designed to do. Because out of the box, Windows 10 and 11, there is some work. And like Hilko said, don't jump over just yet, because there are a few small things that need to be sorted before we would recommend it. One that I ran into myself, for example, is unmounting an ISO file while you're still in the folder. After that, you can reboot your machine. I noticed on the interwebs that there were more people having that problem. I believe, Hilko, you noticed something as well?
Yeah, I thought, let's do some work. Let's get my kids behind a PC and let them play a game. But then the Logitech steering wheel didn't work, something with a driver error on that. So I'm not sure if my youngest boy is actually the driver that has an error or the driver behind the steering wheel, but we'll see.
It's a very strong error message there. Like, it makes you doubt. Which one do you mean? Like, is it technical or is it just something I need to educate my son on? And the last one I personally got hit by pretty big is that the VPN, we use Cisco Meraki devices here in the office, Windows 11 and Cisco Meraki, no joy at this point. I'm sure it'll be sorted out and I can just plug a wire into my notebook for the time being. So that's cool. But yeah, a few small things to work on. Obviously, we wouldn't leave you without a joint statement on what we think are some cool things that you can do today. Now, if you're a techie at heart, like Hilco, like myself, download your copy of Windows 11 today. You can even use it as your daily driver. It's pretty cool. There are a few small bugs. Just don't blow it to all of your users in your VDI environment just yet. Secondly, Hilco?
Yeah, of course, you need to optimize your system with VMware OSOT. I mean, Mark has said it in previous presentations, but if you do not optimize, your density is going to be so extremely low, it might get as low as just a handful of VMs on a big server. So you definitely want to do any kind of optimization. And of course, I prefer you to use the VMware OS optimization tool, but there are third-party tools as well that also do a reasonable good job.
Yep. And lastly, of course, test your application compatibility, your application infrastructure load, and production environment continuously with Login Enterprise. Of course, there's also a free trial available for that on our website, or if you just want to have it, just hit us up and we'll be happy to send you a copy of that. With that, I think we passed our time mark. So Hilco, I want to thank you very much. We'll be jumping over to Cisco for a small sponsor break. So if you want to get a refreshment, a coffee, a drink, this is the time. And we'll be back in 4 to 5 minutes. So see you then.